Okay, today what we're going to be talking about are some exercises that target your hamstrings. One of the questions that I've received over the course of the challenge is about hamstring exercises, knee bending when we're walking. And so I'm going to start with just a few exercises that you're probably already familiar with, but point out some ways to change this to help you engage your hamstrings if you're not doing that really well, or to increase the challenge if you are able to do that. So your hamstrings are a muscle that attaches up underneath your bottom, travels down the backside. There's two groups of those muscles, and they cross across your knee to attach. So we most often think about them as the knee bending muscles. So if you are walking and you have to come up over something to step over, you would need to engage your hamstrings. If you are stepping up onto a step, or a curb, we need to engage our hamstrings there. As we walk backward, if we're not going to hike our leg, swing our leg around, if we're going to try to have our more affected leg behave as much like our less affected leg as we can, what we're going to do is we're going to bend our knee to step back. So hamstrings are involved in a whole lot of other things, but those are some of the big ones where people get hung up after a stroke. So what we're going to look at first is a bridge. And so you have probably been doing bridges all along, maybe since you first had your stroke starting in rehab. It's a great exercise. It can be done in a lot of different ways. So what a bridge is a lying down exercise where we have our knees bent, and then we raise our bottom up in the air, trying to get a nice straight line from our shoulders to our knee. Okay, that is what a typical bridge looks like. So what can happen for folks is that we're going to say, for right now, I'll pull my sleeve up. This is going to be my more affected side. What can happen for folks who have had a stroke is when you go to make this movement, you may find that that leg starts to shoot out, is the term that I would use, right? You go to lift up and it's shooting out from under you. So if your knee is straightening, that means one of two things, and probably both are happening. One, that those knee benders are not engaging and turning on and doing their job. And then what is mostly happening in that situation is the knee straighteners are the muscles that your brain is turning on. And so you're not getting an efficient use of that leg. And of course, that can make it difficult to scoot around in bed, to lift up, to pull britches up if you're dressing in lying down, and for all sorts of things. So what we're going to look at is how you can modify this bridge to help those knee benders engage more and discourage those knee straighteners from turning on. So first things first, we are going to look at, I'm going to place this up here just so I have it. All right, so if we come up, and you'll notice I'm coming up trying to keep my leg bent as I do it as best I can. Some folks will scoop up underneath and straighten, but if we want to try to engage our hamstrings, if I can use my less affected to help my more affected come up, which is a challenge, and we can work on a progression for that as well. That can help your brain learn to turn those hamstrings on when you are coming to lie down. So what I want you to think about, typically people will get themselves set up for their bridge, right? And if I do a bridge and I really heavily engage my knee straighteners versus my knee benders, it'll look like this, where I push my bottom up, but I'm also pushing my upper body away from my feet. So if I come back down, if I put this yoga block away from my head, kind of bring it in a little closer. If I bridge and I'm not really engaging my hamstrings, I'm going to move closer to the block. And you all, if you are doing this exercise, you might not have been paying attention to that, but it's something to start to notice. So What I want you to think about is we don't want our body moving away from our feet. We want our body moving toward our feet, down this way. So as I bridge in, I'm going to think about my knees moving in that direction toward my feet as I lift up. So if I can, I'm going to kind of get myself situated in my up top as best I can. And I'm going to, as I lift up, move my knees toward my feet. And you can see, if I do this, I'm going to put the yoga block. So right now, there's no space between the block and my head. If I come up and take my knees toward my feet, I've got space, okay? So it may be that your less affected leg is doing more of that work, and that's fine. And you may need to start out not bridging your bottom up all the way. One of the keys is to start small with your movement if you're trying to move in a new way so that your brain can get the feel for sending the signals to the correct muscles. That's the way I like to think about it and how I like to explain it to folks. So again, if I bridge up, I'm going to take my knees toward my feet, still lifting my bottom up, but focusing on that piece and lower back down. And I can let myself slide back again when I do that. And as I get better, knees toward my feet, I can lift up a little bit more and then come back down. So some things that can be an issue for people is your foot staying in place even as you're thinking about that piece. So there are a few things that you can do. I'm going to just roll this yoga mat out for two reasons. One, so you can see a little bit better what I'm about to add to this. And the other is to give a little traction. So what I'm going to show you here are two. They're like yoga stretch wedges, I think is how they're advertised. And I'll put a link down, or I'll include a link so that you can find these on Amazon. But of course, you could look anywhere else. They're just a dense foam with, see if I can get those out there, like a pretty decent incline. This particular set comes as a set of two, which is sort of nice because then you can make something steeper if you need to. So if your foot tends to slip, you could put these on the surface where you're exercising. And then I have the yoga mat down because we're going to be putting pressure into that. And so that will help it be discouraged from slipping when we do that. If these, I use these for a lot of different things. If I were going to be using these primarily for this type of activity, I would go ahead and get some non-skid, like shelf liner is what we use, and tape it to the bottom so it would already be on there. So I'm going to set this up, and I will tell you, I tried this first off with both of them stacked, lined up with each other. But that makes a pretty steep kind of incline. It was too steep for me as I went to do the exercise, so I decided, all right, I'm going to make this a little less and slide this one down, because I discovered for me, and I think it needs to be a little bit steeper than just one for you to have some discouragement of your foot slipping out from under you. So it was one plus another, but not slid all the way back. So if you may need somebody to help you get this placed. I'm trying to show you these exercises as best as possible, that you could do them on your own, but every once in a while, I might show you some things that you're going to need some help with. So I'm going to move my yoga block. I'm going to come down. So again, this is going to be my more affected side, closer to you. I'm going to put my foot on that yoga block, okay? So that, and I'm going to try to make sure I'm getting myself situated so that if I go to push, it's going to help with my foot being up in this position and my ankle in this position. It's going to help encourage me to engage my hamstrings more. But I'm still going to think about my knees moving in that direction. Okay? That's one solution that works for some people. Now, these are options. Something that I show you may not work for you. It may work for someone else. Another thing that will show folks is using a stretching strap like this. And I like this one because it's made of just consecutive loops. So you can get your hand through it a little bit easier. And so the way that you can use this is I'm going to come around and I'm going to take this end loop and I'm going to grab the rest of it and slide it through. So it's got a little slip knot there around my ankle. And I'm just going to kind of throw it up over my shoulder because I want it to be accessible to my less affected hand once I lie down. So as I come to lie down, I have this strap and it's attached to my ankle. You need to be mindful of your skin and any issues that you may have around your ankle. So this may not be for everyone, but it's something that you can use. So you can have this strap coming one of two ways. It could come up over the top of you, or you could bring it under your bottom. And so again, I have these loops that I could get my less affected hand through. And if I give a tug in this direction, it's going to help my more affected leg stay in place as I bridge. So if I find the loop that I need and come through, and if I give a pull up as I'm bridging up, it's going to help it be discouraged from coming forward. So just so you can see a little better from the opposite direction, we'll kind of do a little switch and say, now this is my more affected side. And we'll say that we had already gotten the strap in place and we're in our bridging position. So I can come up underneath, and then there are those loops, and I just know from having done this, I'm going to come the second loop away from that little pad so that I'm going to be pulling, but just bending up with this arm as I come up, and I can kind of get it up under my rear to get that. So it's getting a pull in this direction. So if I start to kick with that one, I can know, okay, wait, I need to think that I'm taking my knees over my feet, but I can help it stay this way. So that's just another option maybe you could use if your more affected leg tends to shoot out when you're doing that bridging motion. Now, if you are able to do that bridge without your legs shooting out from under you, then you can make the bridge engage your hamstrings more by the position of your feet. Now, for this particular progression, so if I'm here, my feet are relatively close to my rear, and we said we're thinking about knees going forward. Now, I can engage my hamstrings more if I take my feet away. Now, another piece is that we want to try to have our heels where we can dig them in. Now, this foot lift may be an issue for you. So if you're someone who has an ankle foot orthosis, you might want to actually keep it on for this particular exercise to help you keep your foot in this upper position to be able to push into your heel. This is another place where you could come in with your wedges to help you keep your foot in that upper position, okay? So now, just so you can see what the progression is, I take my feet farther from my bottom. They're going to be up. I'm going to think about digging my heels down into this mat and lifting up, okay? I could walk them out farther, thinking of digging in as I lift up, and that's going to help to engage those hamstrings more. Now, that is the progression if you have good control and you want to challenge it more. Now, if you finally are getting the hang of knees going in that direction, your legs not coming out, a progression you could do is hold and lower slowly. and then come back up. And lower slowly. A next step you could make is to come up and hold and move your less affected foot a little bit, sliding it along the surface as you keep your bottom up and your heels digging in, knees going toward the wall. So that's a very small progression for that bridge. Okay, and I'm going to show you in another video, I'm going to show you 1 or 2 more ways that you could work on that hamstring engagement.